Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my Amazon storefront. I've pulled together more than a dozen lists of my favorite gifts, books, and spring cleaning items for educators. My collections on Amazon make it easy to find all of my books written by Easy EdTech Podcast guests, and so much more. Use the link classtechtips.com/Amazon to go straight to my Amazon storefront. That's classtechtips.com/Amazon. This week's episode is titled Fun and Creative Summer Reading Activities for All Ages. Now, summer is a great time to take a spin on traditional classroom reading activities. If you're listening when this goes live in early May, you may already be in summer mode or summer planning mode, whether you're looking to host a summer reading challenge for kids or simply want to share some ideas for families to try out over the summer. No matter where you're at, I've got you covered. And in today's episode, we'll look at over a dozen tips and a handful of my favorite EdTech tools. All the activities I spotlight today are ready for you to customize for your students. You might make a few tweaks and then share the complete list or just a couple in a weekly newsletter with families. Totally up to you. This is a set of resources for you to run with and make your own. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this list of creative and super fun summer reading activities for all ages. Now, before we get into the dozen or so activities, just a few notes about helping kids find books they'll love. You may be a pro with this, always quick for a recommendation, but if you are giving some suggestions for families, like things for them to do to talk about books when they might not be used to it as much as, say, you and I are, here are a couple suggestions you can make for them. You can encourage families to ask questions like, what do you want to learn about? This can help narrow down topics, particularly for informational texts like dinosaurs or outer space. You can also encourage families to push their students or push their kids to explore different genres. So if there is a genre they love, such as mysteries, maybe stick with that for the first half of the summer and then introduce something midway through that might feel a little different. And of course, you can encourage families to visit a local library if your school district library is closed during the summer months. Librarians are amazing at recommending books. They often host summer reading programs, and you might even send home some information to families about a local library so they can decide if they'd like to carve out some time to get a library card and explore a new space. So back to that list of summer reading ideas. The first one you might try yourself or recommend to families is to listen to audiobooks. You can check out audiobooks from a library space. Every library is a little bit different. It might be an app like Libby or Hoopla. Audiobooks are great for travel or for when kids want to read but need a hands-free, screen-free option. I've been a longtime fan of Audible. This year, I've even tried out audiobooks on Spotify. I pay for Spotify Premium for music listening, and I was really surprised by how many titles they have for free as part of its premium package. Transparently, I'm kind of over Audible between my library, the Austin Library in the new town we moved to last year, and Spotify, which I'm already using for music. I think I'm covered for audiobooks in terms of platforms, and I know I'll be diving in a bit more this summer too. Next up, you might track books with a digital reading log. Using Google Sheets or reading log app like Bookly, you can track book titles, authors, and page counts as a reader. Instead of it feeling punitive or like there's a hard schedule someone needs to follow, you might celebrate student reading progress at the end of each week or talk about reading goals alongside a log. If you are not working with students over the summer, recommending this to families might be a great thing to try. Or of course, you can start with Google Sheets or Google Form, I should say, or make a Google Sheets template and share that with families if they want to try out that strategy at home. Number 3 on the list is to create book trailers. After finishing a book, you can encourage students and families to design a fun book trailer, maybe using an app like iMovie or Adobe Express. I've shared a handful of posts on the blog that feature video activities, and I'll link out to some here in the show notes. I have one that has tips for using the animated feature in Adobe Express. Love all things Adobe. I do some work with their team, so that tends to be a go-to, but you've got plenty of options. You might also encourage families or try yourself to host a virtual book club. You can connect with friends, fellow readers on Zoom, Google Meet to discuss favorite books and characters. Even if a group of kids is of a different age or maybe has a little bit different interest in reading materials, they could still have their time to share a favorite book and their love of reading. Another activity, this could be a solo one or something bigger, is to have students write an alternate ending for a book. You can spark kids' creativity by having them write a new ending or maybe even a final new chapter to a book that they loved or maybe felt frustrated with the way that it turned out. If you work at home over the summer, you might recommend the tools to families that students have try out during the school year, maybe queue up a couple newsletters before the school year is over so that they'll go out automatically over the summertime. And if you participated in Be an Author Month this past March, you might recommend a familiar tool like Book Reader to families so kids know exactly where to go to write their alternate edit. You might also decide to share an activity related to the setting of some favorite books. You can encourage students to explore a setting of a story through Google Maps or look at a virtual reality friendly site like Google Arts and Culture. If the setting of the book isn't super duper common, you might head to a tool like 360s.net. I love this one. It has oodles of content to sort through, so it might be overwhelming at first, but it is a great one to go to if you're looking for something that might feel a little more off the beaten path. If searching for the setting doesn't grab your attention, our next tip is creating the setting. This year on the blog, if you follow along, you know that I've shared lots of ideas for using AI, including how to generate images with AI. So you might suggest some tools to families like Adobe Firefly, where they can create images together. Then they could write a prompt and create an image as a family that represents the setting of a book that they love. Now, another thing you might decide to recommend to families is to connect with the author of a book online. You can encourage families to check out the author's website or social media. Some authors are super duper social. They love posting things, interacting with young readers who might comment on a post, and they post content that complements their book. So isn't true of every author, but it might be worth encouraging families to consider if they are on social spaces and have some favorite authors as a family. Now, next up is another audio option, and that's to listen to an interview. I'm a big fan of podcasts, of course. You're listening to me here. I've got some favorite kid-friendly ones I'll put as a link in the show notes too. But you might find an interview with a favorite kid-friendly author that you want to share with families. Authors tend to jump around on podcasts when they're promoting their book. So it might be something where you're actually able to find some good interviews that are student friendly on a podcast that you might not have been able to find in the past. So far, some of our reading activities are to listen to audiobooks, track books with a digital reading log, create book trailers, host a virtual book club, write an alternate ending, search for the setting, create the setting, and perhaps even connect with an author online or listen to an interview. I've got just a couple more for you here, so let's keep adding to our list. You might encourage families to make a digital character sketch. You can ask students to use a drawing app like Sketchbook or Procreate to illustrate their favorite character and include personality traits. They can also use a tool that includes simple drawing like Seesaw or Book Reader. This is awesome as a creative activity in a summer program, or again, something you might recommend to families to try out. Another thing to explore is designing a book cover. There are lots of graphic design tools that are templates for students, including templates for book covers. I'm recording this episode for you a couple weeks in advance. Just yesterday, I was with a group of educators in New York City where we used one of Adobe Express's templates for book covers to try out an activity they might use with one of their groups. Canva also has some, and you could, of course, create your own template using a tool like Google Slides, but designing a book cover can be a really fun way for kids to creatively share a book that they love. Another thing you might try is to create a soundtrack that connects back to a book's mood or to connect to a particular setting of a book. I've shared lots of favorite AI tools, not just those image ones I mentioned before, but also music ones in my AI and education membership. If you're curious about the membership, send me a note on Instagram and I'll give you all the details, or send me an email and I'll get you some details too. One that we've spotlighted in the past is Music FX. This is a Google tool and you can create music based on a text prompt. So one fun part of a summer reading activity, summer reading challenge for kids might include having them compose a prompt that you then use with one of these tools. I say that because some of these tools are not student-facing, right? But kids might describe something, write a prompt, and then you can pop it in and they can listen to the soundtrack together. Another one that has some audio or maybe video is having kids create a book review podcast. Now, I love podcasts, like I said before, and you might share an author interview. But in addition to having kids listen to podcasts about books, you might ask them to plan and record a short podcast-style book review as part of a summer reading challenge. There are plenty of kid-friendly tools available for an activity like this one. Soundtrack for education, GarageBand, or even using audio notes in something like Book Reader would totally work here. You might also want to have kids create a presentation that shares what they've learned. They might create an About the Author presentation as part of a summer reading activity. This is great for kids who have used used books over the summer or read books over the summer from the same author. They might see some threads in their life story, book to book, or just be a little more curious about an author they've spent some more time with. Now, we've looked at a few different ideas. I've got two more for you. The next one, the almost last one, or penultimate one, is to turn a book into a comic. Now, kids can use a comic creation tool like Storyboard that or Google Slides, perfect for this type of activity where they might make different cells or frames for their comic where they talk about a scene from the book and they bring it to life in a graphic novel style format. I've got some comic book templates on my blog. If you go to the free stuff section of my site, you'll find it there. It's just at classtechtips.com and click on the free stuff button at the very top, and you'll find oodles of downloads, including that comic book one. Now, the very last tip for our list on our list of fun, creative summer reading activities is to play a book-themed trivia game. I love the trivia game. I grew up in a house where we watched Jeopardy every night. And for the summertime, you might want to share a few trivia games with kids. A platform like Kahoot has oodles of pre-made games for popular books, but you might also head to a tool like a chatbot, maybe ChatGPT or Gemini, ask for some help with some trivia questions related to a book. You'll probably want to do some fact checking, just to make sure the chatbot got it right. And then you can share those trivia games or questions with students and maybe families too. So we know that summer reading can take many different forms. That's where I've shared oodles of ideas with you here in this episode. So I hope you choose maybe one, maybe two to tweak a little bit, tailor to your group of students if you're working with a group this summer, or perhaps share with families if you have a newsletter where you're giving some ideas for summer activities to try at home. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Use audiobooks, digital reading logs, and book trailers to enhance summer reading. Encourage creativity with activities like designing book covers and writing alternate endings. Foster a reading community through virtual book clubs and author interactions. Offer diverse reading options, including graphic novels, audiobooks, and maybe even magazines. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com and finding today's episode number 318. This episode is sponsored by my Amazon storefront. I've pulled together more than a dozen lists of my favorite gifts, books, and spring cleaning items for educators. My collections on Amazon make it easy to find all of my books written by Easy EdTech podcast guests, and so much more. Use the link classtechtips.com/Amazon to go straight to my Amazon storefront. That's classtechtips.com/Amazon. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.